Hello and welcome back to Boost Your Business English podcast, the podcast where we help you communicate with confidence and clarity. I'm your host, Alex.
And I'm Chloe. It's great to have you with us for episode 4. Today, we're diving into a topic that everyone faces sooner or later, handling difficult situations at work.
Exactly. We're talking about moments where you need to disagree with a colleague, give constructive feedback, or negotiate a tough deadline. These conversations can be stressful, especially when you're not using your native language.
They really can, but don't worry, by the end of this episode, you'll have a toolkit of phrases and strategies to navigate these challenges smoothly and professionally. We'll cover how to acknowledge someone's point of view, disagree politely, and focus on solutions.
So let's get started. Chloe, what's the first thing people should remember when walking into a potentially difficult conversation?
The absolute first step is mindset. Your goal is not to win an argument, it's to find a resolution. You need to stay calm, professional, and respectful, even if you feel frustrated.
That's crucial. If you go in with a combative attitude, the other person will get defensive and communication breaks down. It's about collaboration, not confrontation.
Right, so the first practical technique is to acknowledge the other person's perspective. Before you state your own opinion, show them that you've listened and understood what they're saying.
That immediately lowers their defenses.
Exactly. You can use simple, powerful phrases to do this. For instance, you could say, I understand where you're coming from on this, or I can see why you feel that way. Another great one is, that's a valid point.
Using these phrases shows respect. It tells the other person, I've heard you, which is fundamental for any productive conversation. Okay, so once you've acknowledged their position, how do you present a different view without starting a fight?
This is where polite disagreement comes in. Many people learn to say yes, but, which can sometimes sound a bit dismissive. A stronger approach is to use softening language.
So phrases that cushion the disagreement?
Precisely. For example, instead of yes, but that won't work, you could say, I see what you mean, however, I have some concerns about the timeline. Or try, I agree with you up to a point, but have we considered the impact on other departments?
That sounds much more collaborative. Let's try a quick scenario. Imagine my colleague suggests a project idea that I think is too risky. How would I respond?
Okay, so you could say something like, thanks for sharing that, Mark. I appreciate the creative thinking. From my perspective, while the potential reward is high, I'm a bit worried about the financial risk involved. Could we explore a lower risk version first?
That's brilliant. You acknowledge the idea, used from my perspective to own your opinion, stated your concern clearly, and then immediately shifted to finding a solution.
And that brings us to our third and final point. Always try to be solution-oriented. It's not enough to just point out a problem or disagree. You have to help find a way forward.
Nobody likes a complainer. They like a problem solver.
Exactly. So use language that proposes alternatives. Phrases like, how about we try this instead? Or an alternative could be, are excellent. You can also ask questions like, what if we approached it from this angle?
And this often leads to compromise, which is key in any negotiation. How can you signal that you're ready to find the middle ground?
Great question. You can be direct and say, let's find a compromise that works for both of us. Or, is there a way we can meet in the middle here? This shows you're flexible and committed to the partnership.
Let's do one more quick scenario. A client is demanding a report by tomorrow, but your team needs until Friday. How do you handle that?
Okay, I'd say, I understand the urgency of getting this report by tomorrow. To do a thorough job, my team realistically needs until Friday. How about this as a compromise? I can send you the executive summary and key data points tomorrow with the full, detailed report to follow on Friday.
Perfect. It acknowledges their need, states your limitation clearly and professionally, and then offers a practical compromise. That's a textbook example of handling a difficult situation well. Those are great examples, Chloe. It really shows how these techniques can be applied in real-world situations. That actually reminds me. We recently received a question from a listener that ties in perfectly with today's topic. Should we tackle it?
I'd love to. What's the question?
It's from a listener named Marco. He asks, I work in a multicultural team, and I'm worried that being direct will come across as rude. How can I give feedback to a colleague from a different cultural background without causing offense?
That's an excellent question, Marco. Cultural sensitivity is key in a global workplace. The first thing to remember is that directness varies across cultures. In some cultures, it's common to be very direct, while in others, a more indirect approach is preferred.
So, how can Marco navigate that? Should he try to adapt his style completely to the other person's culture?
Not necessarily. A good middle ground is what's called the sandwich method. You start with a positive comment, then provide the constructive feedback, and end with another positive remark. This softens the feedback and shows appreciation for the person's work.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's say your colleague's part of a report was missing some data. Instead of saying, you forgot to include the data, you could say, I really appreciate the hard work you put into this report. The analysis is excellent. I noticed a few data points are missing from the final section. Once we add those in, this report will be perfect.
That's a great way to frame it. The feedback is clear, but it's delivered in a positive and encouraging way. It emphasizes collaboration rather than criticism.
Exactly. And another tip for Marco is to focus on the action, not the person. Instead of saying, you made a mistake, you can say, there seems to be a mistake in the calculation. This is less personal and helps keep the conversation professional. So, to wrap things up for our listeners, let's quickly recap the 3 key strategies for handling difficult situations.
Absolutely. First, always acknowledge the other person's perspective to show you are listening.
Second, use softening language to disagree politely and avoid creating conflict.
And third, always focus on proposing solutions and finding a compromise to move forward constructively.
If you can master these 3 steps, you'll be able to handle almost any tough conversation with confidence. It's not about having perfect grammar, it's about respectful and effective communication.
Well said, Chloe. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Boost Your Business English podcast. And if you found this episode helpful, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast. That way, you'll never miss an episode.
Yes, your subscription helps us a lot. Please subscribe to hear our latest episodes. Join us next time when we'll be discussing how to deliver powerful and persuasive presentations. Until then, keep communicating.